The events of 9/11 were such a huge tragedy nationally and for immigration officers, for particularly those of us who were working in national security and counterterrorism arenas. It was a trauma beyond belief. We had worked so hard to establish ourselves as, if not equal, then valuable members of the effort with the FBI and with the CIA. And although by that time it had been, I believe that we really started working with them in earnest in '98. And it had been a long, hard uphill road because we started with no resources. I was the resource. I was the national security coordinator with no staff. That changed, but by 9/11, we only had 125 people nationwide involved in any kind of counterterrorism or national security effort. And that was the field offices, that was the headquarters, that was the few people that we had assigned to the FBI and the intelligence agencies. But we felt we had made such strides. And frankly, a lot of those strides were to prove our bona fides to those agencies that we could do our share of the job and do it well and understand our place in the very complex world of national security and counterterrorism. And to prove to our own organization, which was INS at the time, that it was a valuable effort, a viable effort, and should constitute anything more than lip service. Because I believe, this is my belief, the only reason we started this was because we were dragged kicking and screaming into it on the insistence of the FBI and the CIA. And we faced a lot of obstacles, huge obstacles internally, because the bias of the agency was not toward anything having to do with national security. Our own masters did not believe that there was much of a nexus. As the cases started to bubble up and we realized how very serious it was, and we realized what some of those people were like and what they were capable of, it was quite disturbing. And yet, because there had been no catastrophic catalyst, such as 9/11, in many of those instances, we were being asked to pick people up because those agencies didn't have the wherewithal to do it, not only legally, but evidentiarily. In those instances where the person was an overstay or was working illegally in a pizza parlor, but he had this other nefarious life, it gave us the hook to do that. But in some of those instances, it wasn't so easy. They were, for instance, visitors within their time frame, or they were students who were at least maintaining a nominal 12-hour caseload. And what it came down to was whether or not we were going to be allowed to use some of the documents that those agencies had classified that seemed to us to show very clearly who they really were, what they were really about, why they were in the United States, and who their connections were. And that is, as you can well imagine, is very, very sensitive information because it has the potential to reveal sources and methods that the United States rightly doesn't want to reveal. The problem was that the use of classified evidence in immigration proceedings has always engendered a tremendous amount of controversy because there is the tension between wanting to give a person the opportunity to respond to the charges against them versus the need to keep certain things very, very, very closely held. If the choice is between using the evidence and getting rid of the person or not using the evidence and you can't get rid of the person, then you must make the choice that in those instances you use the evidence and you do everything you can to effect that person's removal from the United States. That was not a prevailing view. And we bumped into obstacles in the attempts to use classified information against aliens more than one time, many times, and the consequence was that it ground to a halt under that Attorney General. We didn't do it. It was disheartening, and I'm not going to tell you it was the reason that 9/11 came to pass, but I will tell you that if we had been allowed to use such evidence, then perhaps it might have caused other individuals in the country to think carefully before they went forward with whatever their plans were. But at that point in time, the perceptions were different because 9/11 had not happened. And to this day, I deeply regret that. The one very sad and very sparse victory that I can point to with direct reference to 9/11 was that it was immigration officers that picked up Zacarias Moussaoui. In that instance, the use of classified evidence was not involved. We didn't need that to pick him up, but we did know that something was horribly wrong, that Moussaoui was focusing too much in his flight training instructions on takeoff and frankly not caring about learning how to touch back down again and how to land the craft. That was what triggered the concern of flight instructors who ultimately reported him to the FBI, who turned to us and said, "What can you do about it?" And we did what we needed to do. And unfortunately, even knowing that, and even knowing that there were suggestive things in his possession, they did not translate into being able to reveal the extent of what was going to happen. So Moussaoui was held in custody as an immigration detainee for some period of time, and then it was only afterward that everyone completely understood who he was and what he represented.